Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be sharing some homeschool confessions. So I keep a list on my phone that when things pop in my head that relate to this topic, I put it down. As soon as I hit 10, I make a video. So I have various videos of my homeschool confessions. So number one is I doubt my ability to teach my kids high school, because high school is a big thing to tackle, right? It counts. What you're doing really matters, impacts your kids' future, all these things. It can be very overwhelming. And whenever I feel like that I doubt I can actually do it, I look at my local school district's course catalog. So most places have this online. You look at the school district, they'll give you the course catalog and description of all these things. Every time I read it, I'm like, wow, I can do better than that. And that's not, this is specific to my school district. I've never really been impressed with them. My youngest did do K through second grade through the public school system here. But, even for world languages, they have one option, Spanish. That's it. Even my rural Wisconsin high school had more options than that. Their electives, not really impressed with. The things I can offer her academically at home far outmatch what the school can offer. But, on the caveat to that is I cannot offer the organizations and groups and programs that they offer to students outside of, just academics. So there's a balance of that, but whenever I feel nervous about high school, I look at the course catalog and I feel better. Number two, I raise my voice when I get frustrated, and this is just a natural response to me. I'm sure you've seen in some of my videos, when I get passionate about something, my voice naturally goes higher and it comes off kind of angry, or what's the word, attacking. And that's just kind of who I am. I don't know if it's because I'm the third child and that's kind of how my voice was heard in that, but it does have impacts in homeschooling. So when I'm getting frustrated with my oldest doing math, or I'm getting frustrated doing something with my middle or younger child, my voice naturally gets higher and it shows the frustration, and that can impact my kids. And my oldest has, gotten to the point where she can adjust it, although we are very similar, so she will match me 1-to-1. So if I start getting frustrated, she starts getting frustrated, and we butt heads. With my middle child, she tends to react differently. That it kind of shuts her down. If I start getting in that mood or that tone, she starts shutting down. So I do really need to be mindful of how I use my voice in my homeschool. And it's not the kids, like something they're doing wrong or it's on them at all. It's me. I'm personally frustrated with the situation for whatever reason it might be. It's completely on me. But my actions do affect them, and my voice, my tone of voice affects them. So I have to really be mindful of that. Number three, whenever I'm doing dimensions math word problems with my oldest, she's doing 5B right now, I doubt my ability to teach my kids. And I'll be completely honest. Math is not my strong suit, never has been. That doesn't mean I can't overcome that obstacle, learn, and teach my children. It means I have to put a lot of work and effort in towards it. But whenever we're doing these word problems, I swear to God, they're like SAT questions, and they're super wordy, and like you find the back way to find a problem. They're not very straightforward, and I get the point of them, but they're hard. And sometimes I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, what are we supposed to do? And I will say one thing that I have noticed though. My oldest has gotten to the point where she sees the pathway to the answer before I do. And you would think, oh man, that means you probably shouldn't be teaching your daughter math, right, Michelle? Because you can't even do 5th grade math. But the difference here is she's been given a really solid foundation. She's done dimensions since we brought her home in 3rd grade, so she's done 2 and she's now on 5B. She's done that every single year. We haven't switched math. And she's able to find that way because she thinks about math a lot differently than I do. I was taught to the test to answer the question, not to really think about it. So she is able to get there quicker because she had a much better foundation than I did in math. But when I get those problems, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? But we get through it, and I've even reached a point where I'm much better on I'm much better with the dimensions word problems than I was in the past. And one thing I think is really important is to model the behavior for my child, that yeah, this is hard for me, but I'm sitting here, I'm working through it, I'm using my skills set that we've learned. That is excellent modeling for your kids. I think looking at it and be like, well, this is too hard for me to understand, so I'm not going to teach my kid, is modeling them that because it's hard, you should just not do it or switch it to something else. That's not the modeling I want to have for my kids. Number 4, I sometimes make assumptions about my kids that are incorrect when it comes to homeschooling. So, for example, my middle child, I was looking at ways to introduce grammar to her. She is in 2nd grade this year. We do use core knowledge, but not the skills section, which would entail grammar and things like that. We did first language lessons with her, and it worked well. The memory work helped her a lot, but I was kind of figuring out where to go with her. And I do have the first level of Michael Clay Thompson, and part of me is like, this worked really well for my oldest, who excels in language arts. And part of me is like, this kid, my middle child, struggles with language arts more. I'm like, is she gonna have a much harder time with it because she has naturally struggled in the reading area? And I made that assumption about her, but I still used it because I had the curriculum. I wanted to give her a shot, see if it worked before going out and buying something else. And the funny thing is it works awesome for her as well. They couldn't be any different, my oldest and my middle, when it comes to language arts. They're like night and day. But because, and I'll talk about this in another video, but because the way Michael Clay Thompson is written and the visuals given, she caught on right away. She can break down parts of speech, we're getting parts of a sentence, and it has worked awesome for her. And I'm thinking about that if I had gone with that assumption that this would be too hard for her or wouldn't fit her type of brain, I'd be missing out on an opportunity for a resource that worked really well for her. So I have to remind myself that just because I make an assumption about my child does not always make it true that it wouldn't work or would work for them. So number 5 is I let my kids wear their pajamas during the day if we don't have anywhere to go. So they have to get up, they have to brush their hair, they have to brush their teeth, all those hygiene things. I could care less if they're in their pajamas all day. I will say when they go to bed that night, I do make them put on clean pajamas though. And for me, I will always get dressed. I am never the person to lounge around in my pajamas. I just don't feel put together at all when I'm in my pajamas. Next would be 6. I would be disappointed if my children chose not to go to college. And this isn't some pretentious that I think you need to have a degree to be smart or that you need a degree to get a good job or make money. I think the value of education, especially higher education, goes beyond just the degrees or the time spent. It's what you learn, and especially with a liberal arts education, which is what I would really want for my kids. You get exposed to so many different subject areas, and you learn and you grow so much as a person. And you're also experiencing different groups of people. You're experiencing different perspectives, and this is something that I think is essential for growth. And I think they would miss out if they decided to go just the trade route or if they decided to go straight into the workforce. I think they would miss these opportunities, and that would disappoint me. And it was funny because my oldest was doing, for her writing, she had to interview me, and she was talking about going into adulthood, the things I was excited about. And one of the questions was my favorite classes I took in college. And it's funny because my favorite classes I really thought about were religion classes, philosophy, and poetry. 3 areas I had never been exposed to prior to entering college. I wasn't raised religious at all, nothing about it. I found religion classes fascinating, and the culture, and especially, I studied specifically East Asian religions, and I thought that was all interesting, and I almost minored in it because I kept taking more religion classes. Same with philosophy. Never once been introduced to philosophy prior to entering college. And although it annoys me that there's not a wrong and right, I was actually really good at it. And I could really understand the information. Same thing with poetry. Never once in my life tried to write poetry, read poetry. But then again, I took this class in college and it was interesting. So I do think that there are things college bring besides just a degree, besides just earning more money. It really does help you grow as a person. I'd be disappointed my kids missed out on that experience. Number 7. My oldest is ready for school before I am. So we have the start time at 9 a.m. I usually start with my 5-year-old at 8:30 because I can usually get the bulk of his stuff done before I start with my girls. But my oldest has taken it upon herself because, again, she's very much like me, type A. She gets up, has breakfast. She's an early riser, so she's up by 7, usually 6:30. She's downstairs, has breakfast, and gets straight to work. She'll do the independent things she doesn't need me for. And then as soon as I'm coming down the stairs at, 7:30, she's like, I'm ready for math, Mom. I'm not ready for math at 7:30 in the morning, which I've come to realize, and I think she's come to realize too, because I'll go over there and help her, but my brain is just does not work great with math in the morning, and it's more of a struggle for me, but she is ready to go right away before I am, and I think that's crazy, but that's a confession. I am not always ready at 7:30 in the morning, but she is. Next would be 8. I am both better and worse at homeschooling when it comes to my 3rd child. And you would think I have experience. With my oldest, she did public school K through 2nd grade, but came home after that. And I did supplement her education at home when she was in public school, and I did preschool with her and all those things. My middle child has done it. She's in 2nd/3rd grade. She's on, between levels, but she's done it since the beginning. This is my 3rd child. You would think there are things I do much better that I'm more aware of, and I don't do nearly as much busy work as I did with my oldest. But there are ways I'm worse at it too. Because of the demands of my older children, there is less time I have available to do the fun, cutesy stuff with my youngest. There are things I did with my oldest that I just frankly don't have time to do. And I do feel bad about that sometimes, but I also am streamlining his education far more than I ever did with my girls. So he's getting kind of like he's getting this is actually what you need, not all these extra things. So in that way, he's benefiting from it. But in other ways, he misses out on some of the fun, craftier side of things, just because I do have demands outside of homeschooling as well as homeschooling my older kids. And when it comes to preschool or 6th grade, I'm going to lean towards 6th grade because that is essential time for my daughter to be learning. And that's not to say what my son is learning isn't as important, but when I divvy up my time, my older kids are going to get more of that. Number 9, which kind of relates to this. I was never nervous sending my oldest daughter to public school kindergarten. And, she was my first kid too, so you think I'd be more nervous. But she did really well in a school environment. She loved to learn. She loved being around people, not necessarily socially interacting with them, but she enjoys, and still to this day enjoys, being around people. And she did really well. I remember we dropped her off. I wasn't one of those helicopter parents, like staying for a really long time. I knew she would do well, and she did. She really did do well. In a learning environment. But now that my son recently turned 5, I'm starting to think that he would be starting public school kindergarten next fall. And that makes me nervous, which it never made me nervous with my oldest. And it's not because, school safety, things like that. It's nothing to do with that. But it could be, a little to do with maturity levels. My oldest and middle child were at different maturity levels than my son is or would be going into kindergarten, but it just makes me more nervous. I don't know if it's because I have a almost 12-year-old. I can see how little 5 is now, which before I couldn't because it was my oldest going into kindergarten. But knowing I can do a lot of those things and in a lot of ways better at home makes me feel better about keeping him at home. But it's weird, I never felt nervous with my oldest going into kindergarten. And the last one is, I have academically benefited from homeschooling my kids. I have learned so much, and again, I kind of alluded to that in math, where my foundation wasn't great. The way I was taught to look at math wasn't great. I have learned so much from using the program my kids use. Same with art. I avoided it most of my education and most of my young adult life. And now I'm embracing that because of the things I've learned with my kids. Same thing with history. I took AP US history. I took almost every social studies or history class offered in high school because I thought it was interesting. And there are things that weren't even touched upon that I'm learning with my kids. And I think it helps me be a more well-informed citizen, and I am thankful in some ways that I am aware so much of what's going on and honestly, the idiocracy that exists. On the same time, it's really hard to be on the other side of that, knowing so much and like beating your head against a wall of how dumb can people be and how dumb can people get. So there's a caveat to that, but I will say I am much more informed because I've homeschooled my children. And that could be because, a lot of adults aren't reviewing the Constitution. They're not reviewing civics. They're not reviewing world wars. A lot of that stuff we learn in a certain period of time, and then we become adults, and most of that just goes away. We don't have exposure to it, whether we choose to or not, but it just goes away. But because I'm constantly introducing and discussing this information with my kids, I too am learning and growing from it. So I think that's actually really cool. So those are my 10 homeschool confessions. As always, thank you for watching.